Hello, my name is Drew Styling. Welcome to the 10th episode of Adventures in Job Searching. Very exciting milestone, double digits now. If you've been enjoying the show, thank you so much for watching. Always appreciate subscribing on our YouTube page or on Spotify, sharing it with friends, liking, commenting. All that good stuff is wildly appreciated. Today we have a marketing and creative content director joining us. Her name is Mary Hill Amason, correct?
Amason.
So thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to talk a bit about why you have the dubious distinction of being invited on this show?
Yeah, Drew, thanks for having me. So I was working full time up until November. Unfortunately, like a lot of folks, my last company had some major layoffs, so I was one of those folks. Unfortunately, like a lot of people, so that's why I'm on the podcast today.
Great. I kind of realized that yesterday. This is the podcast that you hope to never be invited on. So I'm sorry that you had the misfortune of being an eligible candidate for the show.
That's okay.
I guess one question I would say, so it's coming up on kind of 3 months now. How are you feeling? I know for so many people, their job, their career is so heavily tied to their identity. So how are you feeling now?
Yeah, it's been a little bit tough, I would say. One thing for me, I had a nephew that was born in October. So it's been really nice to spend more time with him and my family. So that's one thing I think like a lot of people I've been taken advantage of. Another thing, I was working on a Salesforce certification while I was at my last company. That was one thing my team was working on, and so I was able to continue that when I got laid off, and so I just recently completed that and got certified, and so that was really nice. And then just like kind of working on some passion projects, both personally and professionally. I've been freelancing a little bit, which has been great. Traveled a little bit, not a lot because money's tight, but traveled a little bit. Been trying to exercise and things of that nature. So it's been a little bit tough, but just trying to think like a lot of people, just trying to look on the
make the best of it
and make the most of it.
Yeah, that's so wonderful to hear that you're doing those things. I think that's something that surprises a lot of people after they get laid off this isn't great, but this also does open up a lot of time that I definitely didn't have before. It's kind of one of the peculiarities of being unemployed. What are some of those either professional or personal passion projects that you're enjoying now that you have a little more time on your hands?
Yeah, I really like thrift shopping. So I really like thrifting, and in my free time, I really like to go thrift shopping, not only for personal stuff, but I really like to just go thrift shopping and see what I can find to resell as well. But I really like the hunt. It's very therapeutic for me. I just kind of like to just kind of zone out and just look through the racks. I do a lot of like my critical thinking and just kind of not even just daydreaming, but just kind of thinking about like, okay, what could, even like the job search or just things that I need to be thinking about that while I'm searching. And sometimes, I find a hidden gem that either, is like a $500 dress that I can wear to an interview, which is great because I don't have a lot of money, or it's something that I can resell online. So that's something that I've been doing, which I really enjoy, and I don't have 4 hours to just do that all the time. So that's been something I've been doing.
That's wonderful. What's the last great find you got in the last month or two?
Yeah, so when I went to Ireland a couple of months ago, I found a vintage fur coat. So that was awesome. I also found, it's not like a luxury brand, but it's a pretty high-end brand, and I found like a $500 dress at Goodwill a couple weeks ago, so that was pretty cool too.
That's so wonderful. And again, that's, I really want to talk about all sides of being unemployed and being on the job search on this show, and that's, every guest has an upside, and a lot of it is, again, that free time, to explore those passions. It's been a few months now, I guess, going back to the moment you got the news, what did you feel like when you got that news?
A little bit surprised, but not too surprised, I would say.
Why do you say that?
A little bit surprised it was me, but not surprised that it happened overall. I would say, the job, people have been losing their jobs kind of left and right over the past 6 months to a year. So not totally shocked, I would say. For me, my situation specifically, we lost our benefits almost instantaneously.
Oh,
and I had a couple of things that were not serious things, but like I had an x-ray I needed to get and a couple of things like that I just like was like, oh, I need to get this done, but I have some time. So, I had to like drive myself to the hospital in tears like that day, which like I didn't like want to do that. So Basically for me, the first month that I got laid off, people were like, "Oh, are you updating your resume? And are you like doing all these things?" And I'm like, "Well, kind of, but
Yeah.
honestly, I'm just trying to figure out like my medical stuff right now. I have a really expensive medication, unfortunately." And so the first month for me, honestly, was like really stressful. And the stress from not having health insurance then led to me getting sick. And so, yeah, my first month was really tough, medically speaking, unfortunately. So that was my experience.
Yeah, it's awful to hear how getting laid off can affect your personal health, both directly, like you just shared, and stress indirectly. It's awful. How are you doing now with that? Do you feel like you're in a better place mentally and physically than in November?
Yeah, definitely in a much better place now. Have got in touch with a really great agent for marketplace insurance who got me on a great marketplace plan, fortunately. So yeah, everything's all good now. Feeling much better than I did in November. Some weeks, you don't have any leads at all for jobs, and that's depressing. Some weeks, like this week, I've had a lot of leads, and I got my Salesforce certification this week, so it's been a great week.
Oh, congratulations.
This week, so it's been a great week. So, some ups and downs, but yeah.
Yeah, most people say that coming on this show is really the highlight of their lives, so that's nice of you to say.
It really has.
What was the key to not just throwing in the towel and laying on the sofa the last 3 months? How were you able to stay moving forward and progressing, even though, like all of a sudden your life got dramatically changed with, no choice of your own?
I kind of tried to convince myself I still had a job, if that makes sense. So I would try as best I could to follow a routine. I would still try to, maybe not still get up at 6 a.m., try to sleep in a little bit, but try to still get up, start my day with exercise, try to come into my office and do some work. And work might be another passion thing I've done is like, I really didn't know like a lot about TikTok, and I'm like, let me just make some TikToks like for fun because I'm in marketing and maybe I should like know how to make one or know how it works for my job. And so I did.
Right.
So that's kind of been something I've been doing too. Maybe work is applying for jobs. Maybe work is doing some freelance work. Maybe work is getting some certifications. So I've just tried to keep like a schedule and try to pretend kind of like I'm still working. So that's helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, trying to have some semblance of normalcy. I know for me personally, if I don't get started really early in the day, it's kind of a waste of a day. So yeah, I try to get up early as well and really get moving on the job search. How is your family and friends? How have they been able to support you? As you've gone through this.
Yeah, my family has been great. They'll send me leads. I had an interview at my little brother's company, which ultimately didn't end up working out, but that's totally fine. And he's my little brother, so I'm like, are you sure it's okay if I work here? And he's like, no, absolutely. The most important thing to me is that you have a job.
Right.
My parents have been great and supportive and have offered to help me with whatever they can. My Nana's even like, do you need me to help you? Stuff like that. My friends will send me leads whenever they can. If we go out to dinner, somebody will pay for me and like without me, not that I would ask, but somebody will just like pay for me sometimes, which is really hard for me because I'm a very prideful person sometimes. But people will just like do those things for me and just offer words of encouragement or just do silent things like that. So it's been really nice.
Yeah, losing your job can definitely do a number on one's pride. Absolutely. And that's so wonderful to hear that you have so many people in your life lifting you up, offering, those words of kindness and encouragement. Could you step back a bit and kind of, how did you get down the marketing path? What was kind of, before this recent layoff a couple months ago, what was your career path in general? I know you worked for some really cool companies in marketing roles. So could you talk a bit about how you got to, it's how you got to such a good role, and that's almost what makes it more painful to lose it. When you're doing awesome things in your career.
Yeah, well, I had my first job out of college. I worked at a small software company, and I was their event coordinator, and I actually got laid off from that job too. And I stumbled into restaurant marketing. Very randomly. I just was applying to jobs and I stumbled upon this brand that I recognized because my grandmother had taken me to this restaurant all the time when I was growing up, and I was like, oh, great, like let me just apply there. Stumbled into this job, worked there for several years, and just kind of rotated through several different restaurant brands. I had always really been interested by tech, and so I decided that when I put my mind to something, I'm just going to do it. And so I said, this is a salary I want to make, and then this is the company that I want to be at, or this is the industry I want to be at, and then this is the title I want to have, and so I'm going to do these 3 things. And so then I accomplished those 3 things, and I had those 3 things for a little less than a year, which is, really disappointing, unfortunately. But that's, 60-second elevator pitch of kind of how I got to where I am. And I try to still tell myself, I'm still that person. I'm still going to get back to where I was. I'm really proud of myself for accomplishing those things. Maybe I would still have a job if I hadn't left. Maybe I wouldn't. The job I had before this last one. But I'm glad I took the calculated risk. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed it. I think there's greener pastures ahead.
I love to hear that optimism. I think a lot of people that lost their job or whatever get stuck in that what if loop. So how has that affected you, and how have you managed to not let it paralyze you?
Yeah, I honestly really don't let it paralyze me, just because I just knew it was risky going into it. I knew that the restaurant is pretty stable. The restaurant industry, or at least in my experience, having a job in the restaurant industry, corporate wise, is pretty stable.
Yeah.
Other than COVID, there's really not ever mass layoffs there in general.
Right.
You might have small layoffs here and there, but there's just not it's not mass layoffs. And so I just really don't have what ifs. I knew it was risky. I just knew it was risky. So I don't have any regrets. I knew that this was a possibility. And so I'm just trying to, move forward.
One thing you mentioned about, this is the title I want, this is the salary I want. I think that's one of the hardest people do not understand how much easier job searching is when you're employed versus when you're not, because at least from my perspective, you can afford to be a lot pickier and only apply to jobs you really want. Now that you're unemployed, do you feel like you've had to soften your standards somewhat, both in terms of title, company, salary, all those sorts of things?
For sure. To be honest with you, though, I have, but even from there's not that many. And honestly, half the time, the people that are even reaching out to me, I feel like they're scams.
Why do you feel that way?
Some of the recruiters on LinkedIn, they just seem very scammy to me. They always seem very similar, the language they use, the recruiting companies they seem to work for. I think there's just a lot of scams out there. It's really difficult to tell who's a legit job, who's not. I have softened my approach a little bit in terms of the salary and the title that I'm willing to take. I would say about 80% of the jobs that I'm interviewing for right now, or people that I'm talking to, are either part-time or contract work. Very, very few full-time salaried jobs right now for me. Very, very few.
And how does that sit with you?
It's okay with me. For contract work, I'm just kind of okay, this is temporary anyway, so it's not going to look bad if I, leave. And then I've kind of always wanted to be self-employed, to be honest, and so I'm okay with taking the self-employed route for a little bit. I'm not super keen on taking a full-time role that's half of what I was making and then staying there for 6 months and quitting. I'd much rather take a contract job that's half of what I was making and it's temporary, and then we were going to part ways anyway. I just feel like that looks better on a resume, doesn't burn bridges, things of that nature. And there's kind of benefits with contract work, the companies I've talked to. I think you don't get PTO, but you kind of get some health insurance and things of that nature. So.
You're the first person in the 10 episodes I want to say that's mentioned that phrase, burning bridges. I'll push back a little. Do you think job seekers value keeping those bridges intact too much? I guess that's the thing is, have you kept bridges intact from the past and it's helping you now?
Yeah, I definitely believe in keeping bridges intact. That said, I always believe in doing what's best for you personally. I strongly believe that. I really do strongly believe that. But that said, I would rather take a contract job for 6 months and us both know that it's temporary than me knowingly go into a full-time job knowing that I'm going to quit in 6 months. I would always rather take that. Yeah. But ultimately, I always believe that somebody should do what's best for them.
Right. And how did you continue on in that certification? How do you think it'll help you land a great job?
Yeah, I continued on in it just because I'm I was a third of the way done, maybe a third or fourth of the way done anyway. Why not continue it? I had the resources available to me via Salesforce to continue it. Honestly, cost-wise, I think the exam was $75. Why not? It was very easy to study for. Salesforce has an app for their learning learning course is called Trailhead.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have an app for it. So like I
Mm-hmm.
could just be on the plane, whatever, and just like study for whatever I
Yeah.
need. And ultimately, I just feel like that's a great thing to have on your resume. I stumbled upon a job yesterday for a company that basically is a consulting company for companies that have Salesforce. And so I'm like, wow, I got certified today. And then I stumble upon
Mm-hmm.
this job that this thing
Right.
posted about, right? I mean, like, so, and it may not, it may ultimately not help me at all, but I don't know the last time I worked at a company that didn't have a CRM. So even if it's not
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce, knowing any kind of CRM is helpful.
And just for those, it's always funny to have industry folks on spouting acronyms. So for people who don't know, what is a CRM?
Customer relationship management tool.
And why is that important?
So you can communicate with your consumers and your customers. A customer relationship management tool can do a lot of different things, but specifically in marketing, at least in my past, we've used it to send emails, send text messages, send push notifications, among lots of different things. And if you're a salesperson, that's where you keep all of your sales notes and all of your information of those type of things. And a salesperson is probably listening to me right now and being like, no, that's not true. It does way more than that. But anyway.
Yeah, I always laugh a little when people come on here and use their industry's own acronyms, and I'm like, well, hey, not everyone works in marketing. Remember that.
I know, my bad.
Every industry does it. It just always makes me laugh. One thing I would say, you talked a bit about conversations you've had in the last couple months. How have you kind of landed those job-related conversations in general, and how do you feel like they've gone?
95% networking.
Okay.
I know someone that I know introduced me to someone that I know and that they know introduced me to someone. It's all about connections now. Cold applying rarely works, if ever, these days. I mean, I think it rarely worked before, and now it hardly ever works. For me, those conversations I feel like have gone well. Most of the time, I would say it's either that they just went with somebody else, or some of the time it's not been a good fit for me, whether they want me to move, or whether it's an hour drive from my house, or the pay, we're just not in line with the pay or the benefits or what have you. I'm grateful I can be in a position to just necessarily not take whatever job comes my way at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's one thing I would say, whatever group you can get into it. Where I found my last job was through a marketing women's social media group that I'm in. And I still
wonderful.
follow that group every day, and I still find connections in that group to this day. I have a client that I found in that group now, so.
That's so great to hear. I guess one thing I was curious about is relocation something that you're open to right now, or are you kind of pretty firmly planted on where you are right now?
Yeah, 5 years ago I would have said, yeah, I'll move, but I have friends and family here, and honestly, the main reason is I bought my house in 2020, and I'm not giving up this interest rate, so I am not moving.
Yeah, I mean, and that's certainly an unfortunate reality for so many people. They're locked into these low interest rates, and that kind of in some way can limit their career opportunities. Hopefully we can quickly come to a low rate environment where that won't have to be. But, thank you for sharing that, because I think that'll resonate with a lot of people that kind of feel like they want to relocate but don't, want to have to pay far more for housing than they are at the moment.
It just wouldn't make financial sense, right? Like, I would be losing more almost to, like, move. Like, it would almost make more sense for me to stay where I'm living now and maybe just honestly go get a job as a server or something, honestly, than to move and get an industry job. That's really where I'm at financially right now because of the fortunate financial situation I was with my home.
Yeah. If you look back, when you were able to land some pretty great opportunities in the past, what do you think was the key to doing that? What did you do effectively in the past, and what has that taught you about job searching in the present?
Yeah, my first job out of college was, very lucky. The job I got, just found it online. The second job I got was also kind of lucky. But from there, the next job I got, knew someone. Job after that, networking. So I would say, if you can, don't burn bridges. You never know who that might be at the next place that you work. I had a boss at a job who ended up being my boss at the next job. And he was my boss at the next job because I liked him so much that I convinced him to follow me to the next job, as did some other people that I was working with. So, and when he followed me to the next job, my life got a lot easier at that next job. So,
That's
you
great.
always want to make friends. You always want to have a positive relationship with people. Don't make friends. Don't make enemies. Sometimes people don't necessarily want to hear this, or they might not agree with me, but sometimes being the person that people like will get you farther in life than being the smartest person in the room. That's a tough lesson to learn sometimes, I think, especially when you're a young person. So that's my advice. Network, make friends, don't make enemies, and you never know who's going to help you get your next job.
That's so completely true. One thing a guest said that I really loved, the importance of grieving the loss of a job. Do you feel like in any way you grieved the loss of that job?
Yeah, I think I did. And I think, I had a lot of anger at first for a while. Grief.
Anger about what?
Just anger about losing it, and just anger, I guess, like a lot of people feel like, you work so hard and you tried to contribute so much, and just one day, it's just gone, and kind of like I said, and it's not just anger about what I did while I was there, because of course I feel like I contributed a lot while I was there, but it's the anger of, I worked so hard before I got there, which they might not know, and that's fine, but I worked so hard before I got the job, like I work so hard, like, on my interviewing skills. I work so hard on, like, applying myself and learning things and trying to prepare myself for my next step. Like, I worked so hard for, like, a year to get the job, and then I finally got it. Like, I cried every day for, like, a month because I was so happy that I got this job. And then I got it, and then I started, and I was still crying for, like, every day for, like, a month because I was so happy when I started. So it was really hard. It was really hard to lose it, There's nothing, you can't be focused on things that you can't control. And you really can't be focused on things that aren't your fault. It wasn't my fault. Like, it wasn't performance-based. There's nothing that I can do about it.
How do you deal with that fact, knowing that you did everything right and, it still got taken away from you? I think that's a really common frustration of people when they lose their job.
I sleep well at night. That's not a decision that I have to think about when I go to bed at night.
Okay. Do you feel like that anger you felt, is it positively helping you in some way, in this next phase of your life?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think it's okay to be angry, but you also just have to be grateful for the time you had and what it helped you learn, and just try to move forward. I learned a lot at that job. I'm grateful for that job. I'm grateful for everything that it taught me, all the people that I got to meet. I probably never would have gotten this Salesforce certification if it wasn't for that job. Who knows what that's going to help me get in this next season of my life. So,
How do is there a dedicated way you find yourself practicing gratitude? I think a lot of people might hear unemployed and gratitude and saying, are you kidding me? This is terrible, but I'm hearing a real sense of gratitude for you. So is that an active practice, something you have to force yourself to do?
Yeah, I try to steer away from the news as much as I can. I look at the news, and I look how expensive things are, and I look at how the things going on in the world, and then I wake up and I sometimes I wake up and I look at my house and I'm like, oh wow, the electricity is turning on and the heat is working and there's food in my fridge. And because I bought my house in 2020, unemployment is paying almost all of my mortgage, and I have enough money that I can eat and not worry about being homeless, and things of that nature. And so I'm just grateful for those kinds of things.
It's wonderful. I think, a lot of job seekers, would benefit from having that mindset. So thank you for sharing that. If you kind of look back on the last couple of months since you lost the last job, what do you think has been the biggest surprise that you could have never imagined from the moment you got laid off to what you're, now, both about how your own search is going, what the job market looks like?
Stump me on that one. I guess it would probably be, I would say a positive and a negative. What surprised me the most is the people I thought were going to help me that didn't, and then the people I never would have expected to help me that did. I mean, I've had people that I didn't even know or barely knew, like, go out of their way to help me. And so that was, like, really surprising. And I've even, like, told some of those people, I'm like, you didn't have to do this. Like, you really don't know me that well, and I'm not going to forget this. And when those people, and I hope this doesn't happen to those people, but if and when something like this happens to those people, I'm going to go out of my way to help those people, just like they went out their way to help me. That kind of stuff comes back around, so.
Yeah. Yeah, when you said the word didn't, there's one person I immediately thought of that, I certainly previously had said that they would be able to help me and interested in it and ghosted when I actually reached out. So I think a lot of job seekers have that experience where people, for whatever reason, don't do what they say they're going to do, when that moment of unemployment comes.
I have so many unanswered LinkedIn messages, which just really surprised me.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are people maybe I don't even really talk to anymore. But if somebody that I went to high school with reached out to me and said, hey, I see that your company is hiring for this position, like, would you mind just sending my resume to HR? I would be like, yeah, no problem. Unless I just really hated you for some reason. Like, unless you just really did me wrong, which I don't think that these people do. I just don't know why that is like a really difficult thing. I understand if you can't like answer me that day, but so anyway.
And when people don't do that, how do you not let that frustration or bitterness kind of paralyze you? How do you keep moving forward and keep reaching out to new people?
Again, it's just not something that I can control. I also don't know what those people are going through. I just try to have, I try to have empathy. Maybe they're not checking their LinkedIn. Maybe they have something going on. Maybe they just don't want to talk to me. Whatever it is, it's just not something that I can control. So I just can't focus on it. I just have to keep doing what I'm doing.
And if, in the same sense of kind of looking back the last couple of months, is there anything that you kind of wished you would have known 3 months ago that you know now about the job search and how to do it well?
I wish I would have stayed like a little bit more organized. Like I've just reached out to and sent so many applications and emailed so many people. I read somewhere the other day that this lady, I think, was keeping like an Excel document. Like, okay, I emailed this person on this day about this job, and so I should follow up on this day. I wish I would have done that. Because now I'm just like, oh my God, I just feel like I'm so deep into it. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't even remember who I have and have not reached out to. And, there's probably people that like are not trying to ignore me. It's just been so long since I followed up with them, they probably have just forgotten. I wish I would have done something like that. Just kept a running list of almost kind of like if I had a job, and almost kind of like a sales job. Like, okay, here's this lead. I reached out to him this many times. After the third time, call him dead and just like don't try again, kind of thing. So.
I think very few people actually do that. That takes a lot of discipline what that person did. So I certainly wouldn't be too hard on yourself. I guess, if you think about, the rest of the month of February, what are things that you're maybe not doing right now in the job search that you hope to start doing more of?
Probably what I just mentioned just now is trying to keep myself more organized. One thing that I saw the other day that I almost don't even want to say this because I want to gatekeep it so nobody else does it, but I'm going to say it anyway, is I saw somebody share this on LinkedIn, and this has just been like, I'm like, I cannot believe I was not doing this. So instead of just like going on LinkedIn jobs and just searching for a job and just applying to it blindly, which 99% of the time never works, I've been going onto LinkedIn and searching like marketing jobs or marketing roles or just marketing, and then searching posts within the past 24 hours. And then people's posts have been like showing up that like, hey, I'm hiring for an XYZ. And you would think with that it would show like super popular jobs or people who are like really fun. No, I mean, I've been finding jobs with like 2 likes and like 1 comment, like stuff that nobody is finding. And I've applied to like 5 jobs this week, and then I have LinkedIn Premium, so I've been seeing that like the people have been viewing my profile and they've been liking my comments. So and I mean, it's only been like 2 days since I've been doing this, so I haven't necessarily heard back yet. But I would not be surprised if I heard back from these jobs. So that is one piece of advice that I have and that's what I'm gonna keep doing is to do that.
What is something you've realized in the last couple of months is basically a huge waste of time when it comes to job searching?
Yeah, I'm gonna, unless I see a job that I'm just like, this is a perfect fit for me, and I'm just gonna risk it, or not risk it, but I'm just gonna, take my chances and just apply. I'm really not gonna do the cold applying anymore. I just feel like it's a waste of time. I don't feel like it works. I still have the LinkedIn alerts set up just in case it's, a company where I might know someone, or it's a company where I really want to work, but the cold applying just doesn't work.
What, and again, this is all so helpful. I think all these tips are things that, job seekers might not have known, or kind of things they don't want to acknowledge or admit. Is there anything that you just feel like is fundamentally broken with the way job searching is happening in February 2026?
and this is just totally my opinion. I don't know that I necessarily have any facts to back this up, but I just think that the AI or the ATS systems or whatever are just filtering so many people out. I mean, I know I apply for so many jobs, and almost instantly, like the next day or two, I get like a rejection letter.
Our very first guest got rejected 11 minutes after applying for a job.
It's like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I also don't know. I'm also kind of like still like jury's out on whether or not I need to answer the optional demographic questions. I know they have to put those in there or whatever. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if those are doing me any favors or not. Like, I don't know. So
Yeah. I mean, I would assume that they don't look at those at all. That would just totally be my guess.
Yeah. So.
Is there anything in this time of stepping back that you've realized about yourself and your career interests that you didn't know a few months ago?
Yeah, I really want to learn more about AI. That's the next certification on my list. So I want to learn more about AI and GEO, generative, basically like SEO, search engine optimization, but like AI focused instead. Like what's happening when you type stuff into ChatGPT. You want to rank there, as well as like how you want to rank when you search in stuff in Google. So I've been, I want to get a certification through SEMrush, which is a program that can help you with all of your SEO and your search needs. So that's something that's been really interesting to me. I also kind of want to freshen up my skill, like my design skills. I'm definitely not a designer, but with one of my freelance clients, I kind of have to be a designer. So I've been learning more like stuff in Canva and things of that nature. So that's one thing I've been kind of learning.
Wonderful.
I've definitely, in my next full-time role, I'm sure it will be like more strategic than tactical, but I'm trying to freshen up in more tactical things because
Such as what?
just like how to execute things. So like I said, like the design things, copywriting, building emails, literally just like anything execution focused, like being the doer essentially.
Right.
In all things marketing. Because I feel like, sorry to the young people, but unfortunately I don't necessarily want a young person to come in that knows how to do all these things and take me out of a job in 5 or 10 years. B, if freelancing and contract work really is the way that I have to go, a lot of that work is tactical, and so I need to know how to do it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you think either recruiters or hiring managers wouldn't really understand about you if they only looked at your resume?
I guess personality, right? And maybe experiences. I would say, so one fun fact about me is I speak Spanish. I've spoken Spanish for over 20 years. And that's a whole other story of why. But I have like...
Espera. Entonces, vamos a hablar en español por 2 minutos.
Bueno, en escuela y también con muchos novios y amigos.
¿Has vivido en Latinoamérica o no?
Sí, en Costa Rica.
¿Por cuántos años o meses o qué?
Bueno, por dos veranos.
Ok. ¿Y su experiencia en español le ha ayudado en su carrera?
Sí, bueno, sí, más o menos. Más en la cultura de la gente aquí en los Estados Unidos y en las experiencias de la gente también.
Qué bueno, no. En mi opinión, la habilidad de hablar español es algo muy bueno para obtener mejores.
Sí,
qué bueno, that's so cool. That's wonderful to hear. I always like, what's that? Actually did a master's degree in Mexico.
Cool.
Went there a lot beforehand. And again, it's definitely opened up, new career opportunities for me. I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, me too. Put me on the spot there. I was like, oh, God. So for me, like, I think recruiters might not know, like, my background in that. I think it's made me, like, a much more, like, empathetic person, a much more, like, well-rounded person. It's made me want to, like, understand people's experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe want to help people. I like to volunteer, like, things of that nature. I think it helps me, like, in marketing because it makes me, like, want to understand the consumer better. And want to understand, like, all of the, like, every consumer and not just consumers who think and look like me.
I guess kind of moving towards the end, what keeps you motivated? What gives you hope on the job search?
I would say I'm glad, but also not glad. I've been through this before, so I know that it's, I'll get out of it. And the last time that this happened to me, I had basically no experience and I figured it out. So, I just feel like I just figure it out. There are people a lot worse off than me that have figured it out. I have a lot of things going for me. I just think it'll work itself out. I hope so.
Anything that you definitely want to say before we wrap up today, before I ask my final question?
Yeah, I would say, don't give up. I know it's really hard. I know it's really hard out there. It's really tough out there. Continue to network. I know people say that all the time, but just really try to meet as many people as you can. Get in as many groups as you can. The marketing Facebook group in Atlanta for me has been the key. You know, just try to do things of that nature. It's really it's just who you know these days, I feel like. So
Yeah. And then my final question, I always ask the same final question to everyone. If I'm the hiring manager for your dream job and there's you and there's two other great candidates and I kind of like all three of you equally, I want you to brag now. What do you do better than, another good candidate? What really is going to set you apart, and what are you a superstar at? And, when it comes to your dream job, where are you going to go above and beyond even another good performer?
I am hyper organized and I'm a problem solver. I can solve any problem and I can organize anything like the back of my hand. And I'm really fun and I am hilarious. So you will have fun with me.
That's wonderful.
Oh, I have one more thought.
Yeah.
I have the question that will get anybody hired. And I saw this on TikTok and it got me hired.
What is it?
So I want to share it. So
Okay, great.
the question is, you ask the hiring manager at the end, you say, you're going to interview a lot of people who can do this job, but in your opinion, what does the high performer look like? And then you just shut up and you just let them talk.
I really love that. That's a really wonderful question.
I asked that today.
Fingers crossed. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on Adventures in Job Searching. It was so great to hear you. And if every job seeker had the optimism and that you had, I think they would be a lot better off. So again, thanks for listening to the show. Subscribe, like, all that nonsense, and look forward to seeing you all in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Have a good day. Bye.